Hello, this is Haider Ali, and we're looking at Chapter 4 of Principles of Marketing. This question asks, what assumptions does the economic view make about consumer behavior? You should explain any terms used in your answer. Using examples to illustrate your answer, how does this approach seek to explain national differences in consumer preferences? And finally, what lessons would this approach have for an American marketeer wishing to sell a new type of fast food into the Indonesian market? What issues may the economic approach not take into account? Again, as I've explained with other chapters, what you'll see from this is that the early parts of the question are relatively straightforward and simple. As the question progresses, they become more challenging, and at the end, they do two specific things. The last part of the question asks you to apply the course concepts to a particular marketing context, and in particular to see how a marketeer can use these concepts as part of their actual marketing activities. What the last part of the question also does is ask you to identify some of the limitations of taking the economic approach. So these are aspects of the topic, not only in this topic, but other topics you need to bear in mind as part of your revision program. As well as understanding what the concepts are in different topics, other factors that should drive your revision are understanding how those concepts can actually be used by marketeers, and finally, what the limitations of those concepts may be in marketing practice. So, the economic assumptions of buyer preferences are that individuals are able to make choices and rank their preferences. Individuals are rational in their choices, more is preferred to less, and as additional units are consumed, they provide less additional satisfaction. You have the diminishing marginal rate of substitution. As far as economists and consumer behavior are concerned, consumer behavior is considered to be some function of tastes and constraints. In this model, only constraints are variable. So what we have with the economic approach is that consumer behavior can be explained, can be understood in terms of prices and income. Non-economic constraints can be understood in terms of costs. So with the economic approach, the two key factors or variables we're looking at are prices and income. Now, what we mean by the last bullet point, non-economic constraints can be understood in terms of costs. What that's referring to is that where consumers are doing things which are difficult for them, which are strange for them, which take them time, then those are modeled in terms of higher levels of costs. And we'll see examples of that as we go through this answer. Now, in terms of looking at national differences in consumer behavior, the key points here are that as a result of past actions, people have sunk investments in certain types of behavior. And as a result, it's cheaper to undertake these behaviors than the alternatives. Undertaking new behaviors imposes a cost in terms of time and money on consumers. And for this reason, especially older consumers will tend to continue with their existing behavior rather than engaging in new behavior. Now, looking at the content of this slide in practical terms, what we're talking about is the fact that if you look at any aspect of your consuming behavior or that of people around you, things that you've got used to buying, products that you buy on a regular basis, whose performance you're familiar with, whose benefits and whose costs you're familiar with, because of those experiences that you have, those experiences are sunk investments. That, for example, if you're used to eating certain types of products, say such as rice, that you have experience of buying rice, different brands of rice, you know how to cook rice, you know how to store rice, you know how to prepare foods which go with rice, then all of that is a sunk investment. All of that time you spent learning about rice, storing it, eating it, preparing it, and so on, all of that means that in the future you'll find it easier and cheaper to buy rice rather than some other staple such as, say, flour or potatoes and so on. So this is what we mean by past actions of people have sunk investments in certain behavior. And not only can that be applied to, say, foods, but all sorts of different products and services as well. So we can explain this in the form of the following diagram, that information that we have about any products or services that we buy is usually acquired through search costs. These are costs involved in terms of going out, finding out what products to buy, what their benefits are, learning how to use them, to cook them, to prepare them, and so on. And those search costs become a sunk investment. They become an investment where we've already invested the time and money, and we can't recoup that investment. We can't get that time or that money back. And because it's become a sunk investment, it may inhibit us searching for more information. That if we've spent years and years gathering information about how to prepare certain foods, how to cook them and so on, this may inhibit us from going out and gathering information about new types of foods and experiences, because the more information we gather, the more expensive it becomes. So, what are the implications of all of this for a US firm entering the Indonesian market? Well, what it means is that if we consider the Indonesian market, consumers there will be used to buying certain types of products. They may be perhaps used to buying products with a certain level of spices and condiments, for example. They may be used to buying or eating products with certain staples, for example, say rice rather than potatoes. All of this means that those consumers have certain sunk investments. Now, if this American company is selling food products which are strange, which are different to existing Indonesian offerings, then what the American company has to recognize is that it's trying to encourage a type of behavior change amongst its target market in Indonesia. How could it encourage that behavior change? For example, by, at least initially, having cheaper prices, so that consumers are compensated for having to do additional information search about this new type of food which the Americans are bringing in by having the product available at relatively low prices. They may want to encourage sampling. Again, what sampling does in the context of the economic framework that we have in this chapter, what sampling does is that it allows people to gather information about a product, in this case food, at a relatively lower price than would be possible if sampling wasn't available. Also, what marketers can tend to do is focus on those segments of the market which have lower sunk investments than others. For example, the young would not have as high sunk investments in existing Indonesian foods as, say, the elderly. And that's one of the reasons why many fast food manufacturers, when they enter a new market, often focus on younger consumers, because younger consumers may be more willing to experience new tastes, may be willing to experience or try out new types of products, because they don't have as high level of sunk investments in existing offerings. And also, the American marketeer may perhaps try and sell foods that are familiar and entail lower costs in terms of behavior change. And we've seen this with American fast food manufacturers, that in various other countries around the world, they may, for example, sell products, say McDonald's sells products with a rice content in various Asian markets, which it doesn't sell in Western countries. And the purpose behind that is to reduce the costs that consumers incur in having to adapt to these new tastes. The final part of the question asked about factors the economic approach may not take into account. So, where you've revised or you've understood also the social psychological approach, which this chapter covers, what you would recognize is that the social psychological approach takes into account social factors and the impact these have on decision making, and also the issues to do with self-image and people's use of brands to promote self-image. For example, the American marketeer, according to the social psychological approach, might perhaps want to promote the Western brand image of the product because that may be seen by various Indonesian customers as being new, as being different, and they may want to associate themselves with an international global operator, and that may be one of the factors that encourages sales, and that's something which is addressed in the social psychological approach to consumer behavior, but isn't addressed so much as far as the economic approach is concerned.